Okay.
All right, we are live. Nate did not give us any countdown, man. He just hit the button there. Thanks, Nate. Thanks for the countdown. But thank you. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to episode 83 of Pours with the Patriots. Tonight, I am joined by our first Navy SEAL.
Okay.
That we've had. We're actually going to, in 3 weeks, we're going to have another Navy SEAL. So we're going back to back. Pretty excited to have you on and hear your story, but an old time Navy SEAL too. We're looking forward to it. So everybody starts off with a bio. So we'll start with a little introduction for you. So tonight, I'm honored to sit down with former U.S. Navy SEAL Ted Mosure, a man whose life has been defined by courage, humility, and lifelong service to others. Born in Columbus, Ohio, Ted grew up in a military family that moved often before settling back to Central Ohio. In 1968, he enlisted in the United States Navy and soon completed the demanding UDT SEAL training pipeline. Ted went on to serve with SEAL Team 1, deploying twice to Vietnam. Over his nearly 4 years of active duty, Ted earned the Navy SEAL Trident, Navy Parachutes, Wings, Vietnam Service, and campaign medals, and numerous unit accommodations. After his military service, Ted built a successful civilian career in the grocery and wholesale industries. Yet his sense of duty did not end there. Ted has served for over 15 years with the Catholic War Veterans Post 1936, led countless volunteer efforts honoring veterans across Central Ohio. As the president of the Ohio Military Hall of Fame, he's helped recognize and honor Ohio's most distinguished service members, ensuring their stories live on. His dedication has earned him numerous honors, including induction into the Ohio Veterans Hall of Fame, recognition by the Central Ohio Ford Dealers Oval of Office, and the Ohio Department of Public Health Patriot Award. Off the clock, Ted enjoys playing the guitar, fishing, traveling, and spending time with his wife, Linda, their 2 children, 8 grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. How many great-grandchildren?
4 greats as of a month ago.
Awesome. All right. Congratulations. And tonight, we're going to talk about his time as a Navy SEAL, his lessons from Vietnam, leadership, and the power of continuing to serve long after the uniform comes off. Please join me in welcoming Ted Mosure to episode 83 of Pours with Patriots.
Thank you, Che. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Glad to have you on.
Well, it's a pleasure. Looking forward to sharing my story and hope it's interesting.
I'm sure we'll be.
We'll see how it works.
And just before, as always, with the Vietnam veterans, we've had a handful, but welcome home. It's
thank you.
It's probably long overdue, but we try to
it.
make sure we do that. And I kind of tell people out there that when I see them, it's a big thing to tell you guys, because you had a little bit different welcome home than I did and some other
Thank
current
you
veterans.
for that. Well, on a personal basis, I also recognize in my spectrum, back when we had World War II vets, that was a big deal. And Korean vets we identified with a lot in terms of the forgotten war and what have you. But the post 9/11 vets that's just, they're incredible. So I appreciate having the opportunity to socialize with them and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on. And we always start off with a quote. So a lot of Navy SEAL quotes too, but I'm trying to narrow them down a little bit and not be too cheesy. But this is from Admiral William McRaven from a famous speech he made. We were talking about why we're eating, but this isn't about the sharks. But this is "Sing When You're Up to Your Neck in Mud." It's a great speech he gave. I'm sure you're familiar with it, talking about all the daily lessons and what to do that he learned from being a Navy SEAL. So great.
There was in training, they had back in '68, they had a mud flats that was down towards Imperial Beach. And it wasn't up to your neck, but we took an IBS, an inflatable boat, small, turned it over, and all these boat crews had diving competitions, and instructors would rate them. So we did flips and everything else. So we may be up to our neck in mud, but upside down. Approximately 3 feet of stinky mud.
Good stuff.
Just to enjoy.
They just have stories, right? It'd be hard.
It was, we were sitting out in the middle and they were throwing us sandwiches and stuff. So that was what we had for midnight rations or mid-rats at the time. So it's all fun.
And it's always exciting to have a Vietnam veteran. So, I grew up my dad's a Vietnam veteran. And we have to give a shout out to Roger, even though he's not here. He decided to mess with us when to go visit my sister in Texas, so he's not here. We have a seat over there in honor of him over there. And
that's great.
Hopefully he's going to be paying a lot more attention to my niece and nephew and my sister, because the Yankees got booted from the playoffs yesterday. So he's got nothing to.
Great.
He's in the off season. So, but shout out to him. So let's talk about growing up. I mean, Central Ohio guy. What was it like growing up in a military
I
family?
had four brothers, two sisters. I was second in the pecking order. And the thing was, Mom said once our kids, we were able to walk, you're on your own because the next one needs a help. So older brothers and sisters managed to supervise the young ones, but we had a lot of freedom. I remember, of course, it's a different world, the late 50s, early 60s. We lived on the Near East side of Columbus, and I would walk a mile with a fishing pole in my hand and fish at Alum Creek, between Main Street, Livingston Avenue, and south of there. Come back, so I'm fifth or sixth grade. You wouldn't be doing that nowadays. That's just a different world. So we moved north in North Columbus in 1962, and high school was DeSales High School for 3 years, which I maintain a lot of close ties there, and switched over to Brookhaven my senior year. And then afterwards, Dad's my mentor at the time. He says, go to Ohio State. They got a good engineering school. Okay. And you ought to start summer quarter and beat the rush, 10,000 freshmen coming in the fall. Okay. So I tackled a summer quarter at Ohio State. My study habits weren't good. And I went fall quarter, and I'm buckling down. I really need to nail this. But I kept it was like I was sliding backwards. My effort was there. I was working at Big Bear stores for about 30, 35 hours a week, earning my money to pay for school. And when it became apparent that the Army was going to draft me, any student under a 2-point average loses their student deferment. So I went down to the Navy recruiter, an E6. Name's Comer, Comer. I still remember that name. And I says, what do you have available? This was January of 68. And he said, I have one opening for boot camp in San Diego, and the plane leaves in 2 weeks. So I said, where do I sign? Yeah. I've never even seen a palm tree live before. So I signed up, and then told Dad, after I got home, told Dad and Mom what I did. Oh, why didn't you change your major? I said, I'm a little bit tired of school anyway. Mm-hmm. I want to take a break. And so I said, now they did say I could wait till September on a delayed entry. And Dad said, you might as well get it over with. It worked out just fine. What they had, the main Naval Training Center was NTC in Chicago area. But that was quarantined because of a spinal meningitis outbreak at that time. So all of us, there were 17 of us, went from Fort Hays on a plane, stopped in Chicago, switched planes, and went on to San Diego. And we arrived after dark. I remember we're lining up outside the airport, and a bus came along and got us to the Naval Training Center. We got into our racks, not beds anymore. Mm-hmm. And about 2:30 to 3 in the morning, it started getting noisy. So our day was just starting. And I said, what did I do what did I get myself into? But it's okay. Everybody that's gone through that experience, you're in there with 50, 60 people. So you're all in it together.
So before we dive into the military stuff, let's go back a little bit. Like your dad's a career Air Force guy. So did he serve in Korea or? Very
proud of him. He was Air Force, and back then you could get a pilot, you could be trained to be a pilot if you had the aptitude without having a college degree. So he went to Luke Field in Arizona and some other various places where they trained pilots. He and everybody else wanted to be a fighter pilot. Well, he ended up being a C-47 transport pilot, and he ferried a plane down from to Florida, down to South America, over to Africa and back up. And he served in the European theater and was a pilot. His first combat mission was D-Day. And in fact, he had two that day. He dropped paratroopers off pre-dawn, came back and towed a glider full of troops. Excuse me. So he ended up with 23 combat missions. He did all the up till 1945. So he gets back. He went to Ohio State and fast forwarded his degree program. 10 quarters he had his business degree, bachelor's, and maintained his ROTC status, and then went back on active duty and did New Haven, Connecticut, Louisville, Kentucky, had an air base, and ended up in Anchorage, Alaska, where he received one of the first 3 or 4 master bush pilot certificates, according to my mother's letters from Alaska to her family at that time. And he was flying a C-47, not a float plane.
Yeah, little.
and got into some very difficult areas and ended up to be a flight instructor. And then October of '53, he was discharged at the convenience of the government. You won't be the first or last to do that, and commenced getting the family at that time, the family of 5 children, back to San Francisco area, Vallejo, where my aunt and uncle were. We stayed there for a little while. And then mom flew us, I remember, on a Constellation from the San Francisco area into Columbus, ultimately. And so he had a whole career flying Beechcraft aircraft. And by the time he got taken out of the sky by the FAA at age 60, he was flying a King Air for Beasley Industries, where he had started about 1960. So we grew up in the Columbus area, and he was a good example.
So, I mean, you kind of went through it pretty quick, but to flying the H-47s and D-Day, pretty daring. I mean, pretty rough day. Just one time. So did you ever talk about that? Did he ever talk about how it affected him?
When
or did
he had terminal cancer and we were at Riverside Hospital, he finally opened up and said, it was short answer there. It was really hairy. And who knows, sometimes we couldn't find our drop zone. Mm-hmm. We did the best we could, and he knew, that's serious business. So,
yeah.
But he even, when I came back from Vietnam, we didn't sit there and talk. I think he strutted his stuff a little bit around work, that his son was a Navy SEAL, because that mm-hmm. was considered, pretty prestigious at the time. But that was something he never talked about, and I never talked about. I remember his favorite TV show when we were young was Sky King, and he flew a similar aircraft that Dad flew. So anyway, Dad was one of, there were some 16 million people wore the uniform for the United States during the World War II. And he didn't consider himself anything special, just did what needed to be done.
Yeah.
So
that's very common for that whole 16 million. But I mean, looking back now, knowing what you've been through and seeing where it's at, you think he was just, I have it that a lot of those guys were suffering. They just didn't, it just wasn't the appropriate to talk about it.
I don't think there's any
a lot
question.
of them started working really hard. I mean, that generation, they say it's working hard. And I feel like that generation got through it by just becoming workaholics and just putting their nose to the grindstone to forget about what they've been through.
We're going to win the war and then do what we can to build this country up.
Yeah. Well, thank you for his service. I mean, you can tell just by you telling the story that you're super proud of him and
appreciate that.
I'm sure those paratroopers all forgive him for dropping him in the wrong spot. I mean, that
we all did what we could.
Yeah.
And, you've made some parachute jumps.
A couple, yeah.
So sometimes things don't go quite according to plan. You have to do what you have to do.
Yeah. Even in training, it doesn't go as planned. So it's what makes it fun to be a paratrooper, I guess,
Sure.
just not going where you think you're going to go. You'll be fine. But so, you grew up with that, and again, you kind of blew through it real quick. So you're coming off of your age, father's a World War II vet.
Right.
You're obviously old enough to remember the Korean War, going on at some aspect. And, you're talking about pretty quickly, you just kind of blew through the draft. But like, what's it like being, an 18-year-old kid? That the Vietnam War is kicking off. You're getting drafted if you're not in school. You're not doing well in school. What's that real feeling like? Because that's a generation that we don't know about. We're the all volunteer military. So what was that like looming over your head? And
that's a good description. It loomed, but it didn't frighten me for whatever reason. When you're young, you're going to live forever anyway, right? Yeah. So I felt I would join the Navy and I'd be stationed on a ship, or in this case, my first preference was aviation machinist mate. So I'd be turning a wrench fixing planes on an aircraft carrier or on a naval air station. And then while we were in boot camp, and I'm enjoying the experience, everybody gets adjusted. There's anywhere from 2 to 3 days to about a week, and then things start settling in. And probably 3-4 weeks into it, they had an underwater demolition screen test, and which was a physical test. So I thought, well, I was never a varsity athlete, didn't get any letters. In high school, I was kind of half-assed at most things I tried, maybe better than average. So I figured I would try and see if I could pass this test. So for me, it wasn't too bad. You don't get into shape in the Navy boot camp, sorry to say, folks, but they're training sailors there. I get it. So anyway, you do the screen test is much the same as it is nowadays. Time test on push-ups, sit-ups, squat thrust in my day, 8-count squat thrust, and just pretty well wear you out. And then you run a mile, and we had boondockers, short leather shoes that we ran a mile in. Got to do that in 7.5 minutes. Wasn't a problem for me. I knew I had done some running. I knew what I could do. So I paced myself and did that in 7 minutes. And then we scrambled and ran over to the base pool. So at the base pool, you've got to get in and do side stroke or breaststroke 7.5 minutes for 300 yards. I think it's a little further now for a test, but I did that in about 6 minutes. And because I hadn't swum very much at that time and didn't know if I was going to be fast enough. So I put out and did about 6 minutes. And so I was one of 3 people out of 7 that took the test that day to pass. Now, the best guy of our group, he ended up getting the best numbers, but I never saw him again. So he chose not to go through the program. The other guy was Moses Marquez, who showed up for my training class. So we started training together, and he was a California young man, Mexican descent, but he was born in America. And then we ended up going through all the training together and getting deployed overseas. So he was the guy I had the longest relationship with through that time period. So anyway, here I am in boot camp. So I have to choose between aviation machinist mate and actually go to A school and actually learn something, or go to the underwater demolition replacement training is what it was called then. And I thought if I went to the aviation machinist mate, I wouldn't be able to try the UDT later on. And in fact, that was the case. Sometimes your commanding officer doesn't want to let a good person go, and break loose for underwater demolition training. So that's where I went. We had some interviews, and I knew what they were trying to find out, whether it's a John Wayne type, I love me type, and they'll try to weed those guys out. So we started I arrived at the Naval Amphibious Base, Coronado, 2 days after the previous class started. Go ahead.
Before you go there, I think it's good history to talk about, because everybody knows about the Navy SEALs now. You can Google it and see all these training videos. Okay. Pretty much everyone knows what's going on. So we're talking 1968. I think the SEAL, right, the UDT's program was like 63 or 62 is when it started, around that time.
No,
so it was earlier.
Actually, World War II, 1943, 44.
Okay. But the modern day, wasn't was it? Or SEAL Team 1 was around 62?
SEAL Team 1 and 2 were both begun January 1st, 62.
Okay. That's what I was thinking then, yeah.
And they took the 50 people each. They handpicked 50 people each for each team. Team 1 on the West Coast, Team 2 on the East Coast. The best underwater demolition people. So back then, you still had an underwater demolition teams. Now, the primary mission of underwater demolition teams is to get your swimmer line organized, take depth finding, and scout the beach and locate obstacles, map them out, come back and plan an operation to go swim in, again, each in your swimming lanes, and go in and set C4 packs, about 20-pound haversacks, and wrap them around obstacles and blow them. And they're all hooked together by HBX det cord. So they all blow at the same time. And the recruiting film for underwater demolition team included these explosions that went 100 feet high. Yes. Now that's what we're talking about. So anyway, so they maintained the teams, but as technology became better, then you didn't actually need the physical soundings and things like that. I mean, we had a swimmer slate that was plastic, scratched up. So we would have all our swimmer slates there, and a cartographer to make the beach map would use all these and fill in what he needed to fill in. And that was the process back then. And then in Korea, then they started developing the mission to go into rivers and stuff and go through, upriver. And there's a fella that lives in Worthington that is a Korean War underwater demolition guy that I see every Veterans Day when we're talking to students. Anyway, they started a little bit of those small unit tactics type things, and then come fast forward to 1962, we got Vietnam on the horizon. So the Navy puts together their special program to because the Army has already set up their special forces, their Green Beret types, and the Marines had Marine Recon just about that time. We started Navy SEALs, which are mostly oriented towards small unit tactics, land warfare. And so all these people are cut with the same cloth. The same type of person you'll find the same personality in any one of these outfits, Air Force Pararescue, and any more Ranger. There's just one of the blessings I have being kind of older and having associated with various veterans. There's a whole bunch of really good operators out there, and they each had their own thing that they were doing, and everybody tried to do it the best of their ability. So I'm starting to lose my train of thought here.
No, that's good. But I was just saying that, it's a lot different than, nowadays you're going into kind of a little bit blinded to what you're getting yourself into. There's a couple training videos. There's not a lot of stuff out there like there's today where you're able to say, like, okay, this is what I'm getting myself into. There's a lot of like blind faith that, this seems like the right thing to do. And it seems pretty cool. Let's give it a whirl, Well,
that was almost exactly it. And I guess I'll regroup. 1983 with underwater demolition, I was trying to outline their general mission at the time. And so they were rotated in and designated multiple SEAL teams, odd numbers on the West Coast, even numbers on the East Coast. And so that built the manpower up. Now, when I first started, SEAL team started at SEAL Team 1 in November of '68. That's where I was assigned. And there must have been 140 to 150 people assigned to that team. And at any given time, half of them were overseas, working in platoons or something like that. And I think SEAL Team 2 may have had a few less than that, but they rotated a couple of platoons for 6-month deployments at that time. So anyway, the numbers were fairly small. Now it's not a classified number, but the number that's generally out there is about 2,500 qualified Navy SEALs on active duty in various components. They have swimmer delivery vehicle, SDV programs, and any number of things. But the training, the basic training is still essentially the same. Now when I did a basic 18-week underwater demolition training replacement course, that was 18 weeks. And I did 3 weeks of jump school, 6 weeks more of SEAL basic indoctrination. And then we had Mark 6 and Emerson, which were diving training for semi-closed circuit and closed circuit diving apparatus at the time. Then we've got set up for deployment early in '69 to deploy in the middle of July. And that pre-deployment training included, early on, we had couple of people going here and there. I got with another fella in E6. That was, we went to Marine Sniper School. And at the time, nowadays, I understand it's 6 months plus, and they make you a good operator. You're ready to go. Back then it was 3 weeks. So we did 2 weeks, and we were at Camp Pendleton and we did forward observing for artillery, and did orienteering around the hills, and did our PT and stuff. And here's a Remington 700, and here's how it works. And here are the hold off distances, a little bit of classroom work. But then a third week was supposed to be a whole week of range training. But our platoon, Kilo platoon, was scheduled to be up at Suisun Sloughs up in the San Francisco Bay Area for some pre-deployment training, actively working with swift boats and PBRs. So Skip Crane, who's got a chapter in that book, he said, "Oh, don't worry about it. We'll mark you as complete." And I said, "Okay." It didn't matter. So I had no class standing in that. So any rate, I went over to Vietnam, learning on the job, come back, do a SEAL advanced training course, which I did. I finished first in that class, and was invited to be an advisor to our Vietnamese counterparts. So all in all, I figured without the on-the-job training, I had about 39 weeks of training that I went through during that 3 years, 9 months approximately of active duty. Nowadays, they get either 54 or 56 weeks, but they get it, that's all scheduled out. They get their trident and they're assigned to a team, but there's still an FNG, and most of your listeners will know what that means. But I had the same experience. When you're new, there's nothing you can do.
So back to your basic, the UDT replacement course. So BUDS would be today's version of BUDS would be called.
Correct.
So, your early days into this too. So, the first few years of that program, you know what I mean? Do you feel like now, if you talk to a SEAL that's went through in the past, 5 years, is it that similar? Do you guys have that connection still that you would see today, that the training has stayed that pure, or that have mirrored each other over the years?
There was political correctness even back then. And in week 5 for us, which was Hell Week, and then they're going to change it to Motivation Week. Oh, bless our hearts. And we knew it was Hell Week. And so they go back to Hell Week, but they push, Hell Week is just what was normally 16 hours of training a day. Now it's 24. The only thing they won't do is put you in a dangerous position after a couple of days. You're not going to be climbing the obstacle courses, but you will still get your full ration of harassment and cold water, wet sand, but you work as a boat crew. Anyway, that's very similar to today's. And again, now there is a BUDS training. And I'm not sure how they divide it out, but they have an advanced training SQT course. And I had the privilege of going out to 2022 to Coronado, where our anniversary class was graduating. Well, I was in class 47, graduating November 68, and the class 347 was graduating. So we had lined up, we had anticipated several people in my class, well, when's 347 coming up? Because because we wanted to try to get out there and have a presence. And we did have 6 people out of the 27 that we graduated back then. And I was selected to give an address to the graduates. And the thing was that this was set up maybe in November or early December for an early March event. So I'm working on my speech and everything, and then we get the notice that Johnny Kim, who is class 247 as it turns out, and is in orbit as we speak, being an astronaut, Silver Star recipient, 2 tours to the Middle East, Harvard medical doctor. Look up Johnny, Jonny
exactly.
Kim.
I think most people know him from a meme. They don't know his name, but
so he was going to be available.
Overachiever.
And by golly, let him address the class at the graduation ceremony. I got to go to the Fort Rosecrans National Cemetery on Point Loma, and I got the class. No big microphone or anything, but I brought them in. We had the instructor staff around, and we had half a dozen people, 5+ me for my class. And I had consulted with them, including a 30-year guy. I said, "What would you like me to talk about?" So they gave me ideas, and I put it together into about a 4-minute talk that I delivered just 10 feet away from them. And how do you open a talk like that? I says, "I know what you're thinking." I says, "Are you going to be looking this good at this age?" So it put everybody in the right frame of mind. They're a very impressive group. People ask me, "Hey, are they better operators or whatever than you were? Better trained, better this?" I said, "Yes. You look at the NFL, the NBA, any major activity where physical strength, physical agility is needed, plus brain power. They're far better today, but it's still the same type of person."
Yeah.
So I have no, but I still feel part of that community. In fact, they give me a special sort of status being a Vietnam vet. Who knows, there was maybe 1,000 total SEALs who rotated in and out of Vietnam. We did multiple tours. I did 2, some did more. But at least half of us are gone. So, but anyway, the stress level and the personal challenge is still the same as it was back then. For sure.
I would say that you, like you said earlier, I think the people I've met, that you guys all have the same mentality that enabled you to get through it, and I don't think that's changed over time. Just the willingness to not give up and just fight through it. That's They may be a little bit dumber because you didn't know, they know what's coming. I don't know if that's the right way, but there's no secret about it anymore, right? Like when you did it was kind of, it wasn't really known. So I mean, I don't say dumber, but just as a joke, they know what they're putting themselves into. So
St. Clemente Island was some far away never land. For me, I didn't know where St. Clemente Island was, but that's where we did our last live explosives training. And we did the long swim, which again, I claim to be the slowest swimmer in the class based on my finish on that particular swim. Turns out I found the guys in the fast group, medium group, slow group. And hey, did you guys run into the current too? Yeah, we all had it, because normally a kelp bed comes up from 30, 35 feet. You've got a little bit on the top of the water, and we're we're out from shore a quarter mile and swimming. But when the instructor, Dick Pearson, came by and said, Mosure, you've been in the same place for 45 minutes. And I looked down, instead of this kelp being up, it was laying down flat like I'm a salmon swimming upstream. So whatever that is, a knot and a half or 2 knot current. So there's only one choice. You cannot not finish. You have to crank it up and go. And anyway, that I did it. And the training classes, like we started off with maybe 85. We were trying to get our numbers together, us old guys trying to figure out how many started our class anyway, July 1st, 68. And the consensus was about 80 to 85. And we graduated 22 of the originals of that. We had 5 rollbacks plus a foreign duty officer that stayed. So that was 5 rollbacks, 22. So that was it. Class 46, we had some guys come back or roll back. But nowadays, if you've got some potential and the training is long, you'll get some consideration. They'll make it have some discretion to whether you can stay in training or not after you heal. Back then we had a Mike Lacaze who started, I think, class 42. He messed up his knee, and surgeons were better now than they were then. And so his knee didn't come around till he was class 49 a year later. And he graduated with a good sized class. But he was on the shelf for a year. Good athlete, good trainee. So anyway, well, it was good experience.
What was the hardest part of it for you?
Swimming. Swimming was the hardest part of the work. Physically, we had to do timed swims all the time and reduce the time. And after, I forget which, maybe 3 weeks into it, then you had a timed swim for a mile swim in the ocean. And you had to do it in about 33 minutes, as I recall, which is scooting. And I did it. And then it seemed like we were, once you got your fins, wow, this is great. But then they ask longer swims and still reduced times. Obstacle course was a challenge. We had basically the same obstacle course we had now. Now they say, 15 minutes tops. But you don't want to be around 15 minutes on that. The good guys are down around 8 minutes. I recall being under 10 minutes. And just, sometimes the big guys, there's different obstacles are harder, and they allow for a lot of that, but there's lots of harassment, lots of goon squad, lots of extra attention. Running, I was in the top 3rd or 4th. We would do a timed run, let's say a 4-mile timed run out on the beach, and I have like Cochrane's on, big boots, and that's what we would run in. And if the Lord blessed us with low tide, then you could do pretty well, but then they would run you up into the soft sand and stuff. But if it was a timed run, 28 minutes was about the average. And if you're over 30, you weren't doing well. The best guys were in the 24-minute range. I was under 26, maybe 25, 45, 25, 30. And that was pretty good. But obstacle course running, no issues. The schoolwork, the academics where you have diving physics and explosive physics and everything else, that seemed easy for me. That I just absorbed that pretty well. But the swimming was a challenge to meet the times. Now, if you have, they're always harassing you, push-ups and what have you, and you do everything you can, and you better be making minimum push-ups. But I never got more than 76 push-ups at one time. Now these people are on internet, bouncing up and down like, don't you have lactic acid in your body? So, but we've all been there, and you're shaking, but you've got to tough it out. You give me one more, and so your arms are noodles. I could do 16, 17 pull-ups at the time with a body weight of 155. Now I'm still as strong as I was, but I've got a little more to move.
A little more junk in the trunk, huh?
So it's all good. But the cold water is something that everybody has to deal with, and they bring you to the edge of hypothermia. And I've been there before, and things won't work, and you're a little ditzy, but just suck it up and do your best. And frankly, I found the training to be difficult but doable. It's like Groucho Marx once said that, I don't want to be a member of any club that would have me or something. Well, I'm saying how hard could this training be if I'm an average guy and I could do it? I never would have had fast swim times or run times for any letters in high school. So there's plenty of good athletes out there. And a lot of times it's your mindset.
Yeah.
And teamwork. For me, I'm running along, and, this kind of sucks, but Lauren Decker's right over there. And I know I'm not quitting before he does. And he's probably thinking Mosure's back in the back there, and I'm not quitting if he won't quit. So that helps. One of the better stories the anecdotes that I say, we started with 3 foreign officers, one from Thailand, a Mr. Yi, and a Lee Van Man from E5 from Vietnam, and a Mr. Yi from Korea. Now he was in 03, and imagine coming over here and you're immersed with English, and who knows how well he could speak it. But he would sit there. This maybe was in the second week, and things, they're on you because they don't want to waste time, wait until week 10 to figure out who's going to make it or not. So he says, we sang, "We love this, Chief Allen, blah, blah, blah." Well, Mr. E says, "You say you love this. I don't love this." and we would, not in front of him, we try to encourage him. "Mr. Yi, we're just trying to keep our spirits up." But he, "Oh, you love this. I don't understand that. I don't love this." And he was gone within a few days. So it's a physical challenge that most people that are decently physical fit can do, but it's up in the mental. Some of the, and you have to decide. I heard of a few, I didn't know any personally, that, let's see if I could get through training. Yeah, I got through, and then quit the program and went back out to the fleet just to brag that they went through the training, which you have to decide whether that's, provided you get through, you're willing to do the job.
Exactly. I think I'd add in luck there from the stories you hear. It's also got to be lucky to avoid like any major injury or something. But yeah, the
Yes.
mental part, you hear plenty of podcasts out there where they talk about it now, but they talk about the same thing. Guys are like, I'm average, but I just wasn't going to quit, and
Yeah.
the rest of that, I mean, I think sometimes you guys sell yourself short about saying you're average at that kind of stuff. So, cause running 6-minute miles on a wet beat on sand is not average running, I would say.
True. But it was an average trainee, let's say. And the longest run was the Friday before Hell Week. It might be 14 miles. They called it the 16 miler. Again, boots. We have our fatigue pants, t-shirts, bald heads are close to it. This is week 4, day 5. And we form up and we're running in step and not an airborne shuffle, a little faster, about 7:15 a mile, and go from the training area, which is approximately, well, they've got a different training area now, but up near the amphibious base, you go down to the Imperial Beach Pier, which is about 8 miles down. Then you turn around, you walk long enough to sing a song. And certain songs, you can sing within earshot of civilians, and certain ones you can't. We used our discretion anyway. And then you run back. And then you run to the chow hall. And then you've got a swimming evolution in the afternoon. And there might be something at night. We did orienteering in underwater demolition training up Carlsbad area north of San Diego. It gets hilly, a lot of gullies and things like that. So we did some night compass work and stuff up there. But there's always something going on. But keeps you in shape, and you're going to be a lot better physically at the end than you were at the beginning. So that's a given. So.
Yeah, I just laughed when you brought up. I was smiling when you talked about that obstacle course, because there's a fitness guy that they took out there to do that, and they had there's 2 SEALs with them, and the one guy was showing him how to do everything, and he was smoked. They would tell him the time that they do, and that was one of the funniest things, because the guy was in so much shape, and the instructor that was just running around, and the guy's face was like, you could just see like what is going on.
It's different. And I saw that video. He's a big guy.
Yeah.
I'd like to look like that, but you've got to be agile.
Yeah.
And it's like, what are these shows where people go from obstacle to obstacle, and
like American
the
Ninja
big
Warrior,
people don't succeed in that.
I just thought that was a great video, just because the guy's in impeccable shape, and just the instructor that was demonstrating each obstacle is just so funny to watch him, because he looks literally like it was nothing, and this guy was like, what is going on? So it's a great video. That's what I was thinking about when you were talking about that obstacle course.
Absolutely.
That's a good one. So you finished up all your training, a lot of training, and now it's time for you to deploy to Vietnam. So what's that like now, knowing you've been through all this kind of stuff, and obviously heading over to Vietnam and 1969. Yeah, it's been going on a little bit. You've had these platoons that have been rotating over and coming back, so you kind of know what to expect. So what's going through your mind at that point?
We replaced you. Some of you have heard of Bob Carey, Medal of Honor recipient. He was the first Navy SEAL to receive that. He was in a platoon, and I forget the designation of the platoon. It'll be a phonetic alphabet. Anyway, let's say Echo. So we're replacing them. Now we fly into Cam Bay, which at the time was not a hot area. Excuse me. So we fly this big Navy transport in, and these guys are lining up. And we're having a few minutes to talk, and here we're the new guys with our eyes. This was dusk, frankly, a little after dark, and we have all these guys in the platoon. This was July, and we were hearing their stories, and we knew this was serious business. Anyway, they got on and departed. We got got some barracks, and then the next day get in a Chinook and head down south. Maybe it was a C-119 or something, but anyway, a puddle jumper that went from Cameron Bay down into the Saigon area. And then our ultimate destination is about 180 miles south of Saigon, which is a base called Sea Float that was just established earlier that year. The Navy personnel had attached several barges together, much like coal barges down the Ohio River. So they made a base out in the middle of the Kualon River. Now, this Kualon River was maybe 400 yards wide at that point, and Indian country everywhere, and swift boats, things like that. These people would get hit going up and down these rivers. Now, when you think about it afterwards, well, everybody knew, all the allies are right there, and sure enough, they tried to sapper units and trying to blow up the base, but our nightly, when we weren't out, there were other Navy personnel on board. There were some food service personnel, and people minding these movement sensors, or they had planted sensors out, let's say in the surrounding circular mile circumference, so they could hopefully anticipate enemy troops coming in. So it was, and we had a minigun on each side that we got to test fire once, and that was pretty good. That was and 50 calibers, stuff like that. A lot of, and we had mortars on board there to shoot out to help defend ourselves. And we were within, I forget, Kamau was about 30 miles north of us. And I think we had Seawolf helicopters up there, gunships that would come down and support if need be, and OV-10 Broncos, fixed wing aircraft, stuff like that. So we didn't ever get a serious attack on that facility. So now it was supplied by boat. These boats had to go from an LST out in the South China Sea and come in and replenish ammunition, food, and everything, and transport some personnel possibly. So that's where our destination was. And it was considered a free fire zone. That doesn't mean you can just spray everything that you see, because you have to use some discretion. And the people in before us had opened lines of communication with South Vietnamese militia forces in Old Nam Can, which was about 5 miles north of there. And we had 2 Army advisors. So anyway, we tried to work with the regional militias to gain intelligence, but it was really close to the human forest. Was a large area, and now I understand it's a national park that was north and east of us, starting about 5, 6, 7, 8 miles away, and then extending up towards Rockjaw area, mangrove swamp, everything else. So anyway, our typical operation, we would identify a Viet Cong leader, Viet Cong infrastructure, VCI, we called them. and it could be a village chief or some of these hamlets weren't very big, so you had a handful of EC that were working the area. Sometimes more than a handful. But the North Vietnamese also came through Cambodia and infiltrated into that Human forest area, and that was nasty territory. We would, for instance, if we had a target in a village that we wanted to pick them up, ideally, they had duct tape then, they had zip ties, cuff them and stuff them and get them out. So we would go in on a boat, typically after dark, let's say 10 o'clock at night. And there might be 2 or 3 boats go out, and we're on one of them. So the others are decoy boats. And even on your boat, where we would have 6 or 7 of us and 2 boat support unit people, they had a radar, and you could look down there and you could see where these little inlets were and the canals. So without GPS, you could actually figure out, where you were. We would have fake insertions, and then one time we were really getting out, go up, set security, and then the boat takes off. And we sat there about 15 minutes. Anyway, typically patrol 1,000 to 1,500 meters through very difficult terrain at night, using a compass and counting steps, the old-fashioned way. You make your adjustments. If you cross a canal, your step count was off, you adjust. So that's all good. Excuse me. Anyway, we would arrive sometime in the middle of the night, 2 p.m. or 2 a.m., let's say, or 3, and set up. Now we could smell the candles and whatever they were burning, just the village smells. And then just as it started to get a little bit light out, we would typically make our move before things really got started to make our move to Mr. Big's hooch. Now, sometimes he had a security guy or 2 out there, so we knew who it was. And once things got noisy, then we got him in, got him out, and hustled him down to predetermined extraction points by boat, and get him out of there. Come back. We had nothing to do with any interrogation. The best interrogators work. It's not necessarily good cop, bad cop, but they work with the captive and determine whether he can be turned or choo-hoyed, and they make it worth his while financially. That sort of thing. So it's a granular process to try to pacify an area. What happens is then the people know, okay, we're the one going out there with our hospital corpsman, helping them get better, heal, that sort of thing. And we're out here to fight the Viet Cong. And those Vietnamese civilians, and again, you weren't sure all the time whether there were civilians, but they had to play both sides against the middle. I mean, they want to survive. They want their water buffalo, and they want to cut wood and gather shrimp and sell it and just survive. And they weren't very, they were in the worst spot, of anybody. So we were sensitive to that, but it was, we made contact probably 2/3 to 3/4 of the time, one way or the other. Sometimes it was, we didn't have intelligence. This looks like a good canal intersection. We'll go eyeball it overnight, see what traffic comes and goes. And, so stuff like that, but very small unit tactics. So
I think that you taking people in the middle of the night or the early dawn, or the men in green faces, they were
we
nickname that you guys. I mean, that's sorry for that time, but yeah, there's a big fear of what. I mean, just think what you're saying is just going into an area, taking somebody back. It's not a, wasn't an everyday thing that every unit was doing over there. So definitely a different skill set,
it was
mission, mindset.
Yeah, it was wet. Any time it was high tide, if it wasn't a man-made high area dredged by hand, then it was wet. That was one thing. Men with green faces, when we were in the first phase of our training in July 68, we're running around. If you see a blurb from the movie, training film, recruiting film for Men with Green Faces, we're the bald guys. We were the newbies running around, hoo-yah, hoo-yah. And I didn't recognize myself. Somebody else did. And I recognized some of the other guys. So that was, they were trying to get some publicity or trying to increase recruiting. The San Diego Tribune ran a week-long article on Hell Week when we were going through Hell Week. So you have all these reporters around and putting their spin on things. And they got it probably 51% right, which is okay, I suppose.
Yeah. That's one of those things. I mean, I think there's been a boom, and I don't remember being that much talk about. It was out there about the Special Forces, Navy SEALs. Now it's everywhere. You can find out pretty much everything that's going on. So I wonder if I think it's more accurate now just because the access to it.
Much of it is believable.
Yeah.
When we get out of we come through the 70s and 80s, some of the guys I was in with had put together, this is pre-internet, so they write a book. And now there was a guy, Gary Smith, who was senior to me and from Texas and is no longer with us. But he wrote 3 books, and one of them was Death in the Delta, and you can Google it, Navy SEAL, 3 books. Those 3 books, the first 2 were his experiences in Vietnam. And I was like 6 months behind him doing the same things. Those were the best books that I've encountered. And then you have some others that they remember things differently than I did. Mm-hmm. So, but it's whatever you sign your name to. If that's what you want to put out there, yeah, it's okay.
Well, there's a long time for the side where there's a lot of, it's changed a lot. I mean, you've probably seen it when it went from people weren't talking about it a lot to now, it's pretty open. And there was a time, there still is I'm not in the community, but from just talking, there's still people in the community that don't like it, that people out there talking about it.
And they are. Yeah. And here's the angle on that. I'm a associate member of the Special Forces Association, Chapter 45. Here in town, you got Army Special Forces, the Green Berets, any Delta guys out there, Air Force Pararescue, Marine Recon. And guess what? It's always the Navy SEALs somebody wants to stick a microphone in front of. And we were told more than once at these reunions, get away from the camera, get away from the microphone. You cannot contribute to this conversation.
Yeah.
And so, yes, it's frowned upon. Some of the guys that had come up with books more recently, run them through the Naval Intelligence network to try to see if glean any potential classified information.
Yeah, I think it's important. I mean, a lot of it is like you said before. It's, anything you do is what you put your words down to. Everybody does have different interpretations what happened, but I think a lot of it is just to share the knowledge of it. I mean, I think everybody loves. I still love a good Navy SEAL movie. I mean, I still love Charlie Sheen.
I don't.
90s. I know.
that came out in like 1990. And there's a guy, and he's got credits on there. And he's local from Worthington High School, Tom Harbrecht. And he was on the teams for 8 or 9 years, got out. And he for 4 months, he was in the right place at the right time and made a movie.
It's a cheesy, it's still, I don't know. There's movies that
I looked him up. His name is kind of unusual. So I got a hold of him. We ate at Bob Evans. I bought his lunch. And he said, Hollywood took a real script and just messed it up. And it wasn't his deal,
vision.
But he said he made more money in those 4 months than he did the previous year as an officer. So, and he's still around. He's an artist, does very well. Good guy.
It's one of those movies you look at there. If you look at it now, it's like, wow, this was bad, but I don't know.
We don't go driving around golf courses.
Yeah, no, one of my favorite movies growing up with my dad was Green Berets with John Wayne. And if it's on, I'll watch it every time. But when you I think a couple weeks ago we were talking about it, it's like, Dad, it's so bad when you really watch it. But it was something that growing up, honestly, I can't lie, I was intrigued by it. So you get to see it. It wasn't every day. It wasn't every day you saw this. So it was pretty cool. And to me, it was a movie. My dad loved John Wayne, so it was like a connection I had to him. But it's still
it was hokey.
Yeah,
but it was I wouldn't call it propaganda because that's not what we do. But it showed the best side of a very difficult situation.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it was pretty hokey. It's got some great parts of that movie. Both the golf course one's pretty. No, I don't.
Well, I'm
more of a Green Beret fan than the 1990 Charlie Sheen Navy SEAL movie. But if I had to watch them, So your time over there, you guys, like you said, were at the time the SEAL teams were rotating in and out by platoons. So you stayed there about 6 months or so?
6 months. Okay. Called temporary TAD or TDY. I'll have to look at the orders and find out, but that way you still have a home base in Coronado, and you're supposed to get some per diem if there are government rations available. Well, sometimes those government rations were 20-year-old C rations from World War II. Okay, so no per diem.
Yeah.
So living conditions weren't as bad as a lot of people. I tell all my Army and Marine guys, man, if you had to go out there and hump for a week, 2 weeks, longer, God bless you, because we got out, and if we didn't make a hit, we were typically back before noon the next day. So essentially 14, 16 hours, whatever. I cannot, other platoons did. I can't remember acting on any intelligence that was so timely that we turned around and went on that. Other platoons did, but on the other hand, we're out overnight 3 nights a week. We're backing and forth. We may have a day of downtime, but we're out in the bush all the time. Did you ever see any crocodiles or something? No, I never saw anything. We had little lungfish running around skittering, which I knew what they were, didn't spook me any. But snakes, no, I never saw any because I was working at night mostly. And if you ever, snakes will stay hidden.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure that we had our, close encounters. I wasn't aware of them. I was paying attention I was rear security typically.
Yeah. So you survived no sharks, no crocodiles, no snakes. You made it.
That's right.
So.
Piece of cake.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but all the things. Yeah, I think the snakes would freak me out. But yeah, at nighttime you can't see them, but it's all right. So you come back, from that rotation, back to Coronado. That up tempo is pretty. That's 3 days a week is still pretty. That's a lot. even though you're not going on multiple day stuff. But like, what was that like coming back from Vietnam? Like, just what you'd seen finally after all the training to be doing what you've done. Did you start unpacking of that stuff, or still have it compartmentalized, or what was going on for you?
I compartmentalized because I'm out there in the middle of the night. I'm thinking I'm not the altar boy up at St. John's Church on Ohio Avenue anymore. I'm not the neighborhood paper boy, but it's necessary work and somebody has to do it. So you want to see if you're up to it. And if you're capable of doing it, that's your duty to do it. And I found, other than now sometimes we would go with the other squad too, out and do a full platoon operation. Combined, we did about 100 operations over the course of probably a little over 5 months that we were actually on station and doing things. So 180 days, 100 ops. So, we had some times where there might have been 2 or 3 days off for whatever reason. But I found our physical, we used to do a lot of push-ups, calisthenics, try to stay in shape, but then you'd pick up dysentery and the food often was not good. So, I come back and I was maybe 150 pounds and I was only 160, 165 coming out of training. So, excuse me. So we weren't physical specimens per se. A few of the guys were. The last part of my second tour, when I was in Cameron Bay for maybe a month, I got to hit the weight machine all the time and started and had good food. People who were there in 1970, 71, the Navy base was at the end of a peninsula. So you had to go through Air Force, Army, Navy, or Army, Marines before you got to the Navy base. So we didn't worry about security. We didn't stand watch. We were training our Vietnamese counterparts in what was basic underwater demolition, SEAL team training, BUDS training. But there were no mosquitoes, sandy soil. Got to run on the beach, work on the tan, just
a lot better than your first 6 months, huh?
This was only a tail end. The second 6 months was similar to the first, except for the fact that our operational rate was a little less and had more to do with our Vietnamese counterparts being residents of the country and of the area where we were, and somebody had to have a toothache or to assemble a group and go out on an operation. It took a lot more. There was a lot more organizing to do.
Right.
So anyway, but the last month of the last tour was nice.
So you see, this is what, 71 or so when you get back?
February 71.
And then so your final assignment as a instructor?
Yeah, we went through, I went through a SEAL advanced training between the two Vietnam tours. And then I came back and I ended up taking a shipboard instructor school, which is 2 weeks, basically lesson plans and what a teacher does to impart knowledge in a classroom. And then I was an instructor for what they call SBI, or SEAL Basic Indoctrination. These are the guys from the underwater replacement training coming in, assigned to SEAL team. About half the classes were still being deployed to underwater demolition teams. There were some old time UDT guys that had not served in SEAL teams, so they would take these classes as well. And my specialty was intelligence networking, and what we would do is look over these situation reports and after action reports and find out what's working, what's not, and incorporate that into that week's lesson plan.
Right.
So it was, we were trying to show the guys, what's going on, what works, what doesn't. So that was basically my, most of my remaining time.
So what made you decide after 3 years and 9 months to call it quits?
The war was winding down. While I was in Cameron Bay, so I was still overseas. There was a warrant officer, Jones, who we all respected very much, come down and try to give me a few extra beers to kind of do a mood enhancement here and discuss re-enlisting. Well, what
enhancement? I've never heard it put that way.
If you're going to re-enlist, why not, stay in the teams? But the war was winding down. My rating as an E4 signalman was a non-critical rating. They're a dime a dozen, nickel a dozen. And so for radio men, sonar men, any communications, any hospital corpsman, anything like that, was a critical rating. And for a 6-year enlistment, you would get $10,000 at that time. That was the re-enlistment bonus. And a guy I served with was going to re-enlist. He said, "Ted, should I re-enlist?" I said, "Well, you got anything going on back home?" No, he liked California. I said, you're single? Go for it. So he got the full, you have to be an E5 and a critical rating to get the full bonus. I figured I'd get maybe $3,000 tops. That's for a 6-year re-enlistment. I said, even at $10,000, that's $1,600 and $1,700 a year. I think I can make that up on the outside. And whatever I was lacking in motivation for schoolwork beforehand, I did a complete flip-flop, and I couldn't get enough of it.
Right.
And it came back to Franklin University. And as it turned out, I got a nice job offer for making good money. So I was going to postpone that further study, but didn't. I just stayed out, keep advancing with that company. And that was the basic. This INK Distributors was a very nice company, small, growing, and it offered a lot of opportunities. So that worked out well for me, ultimately.
So let's talk about the time then, you're 71, coming out of the Navy, coming out of the Vietnam War. Wasn't, you talked earlier, wasn't a great time to be a service member. What was going through, what kind of stuff did you face, or did you not face it, or what, what was it like for you, re-entering society at that time?
I had an extra perspective that I didn't have before, and a lot of these people don't have, even as I witness it. So here I was, I didn't encounter any direct hostility. I witnessed it. Some, everybody's belly aching about something. Well, this is and I know you can't argue with people who are protesting, because how else you're going to get something changed? So they believed in their heart of hearts, I think, that we were in Vietnam for the wrong reasons. I personally think we started out with the right reasons, and then somewhere along the way we lost our focus, and too many people died. Some 60,000 Vietnam vets, plus who were, Agent Orange and suicides. Those are all Vietnam deaths. But the South Vietnamese, they lost, I think, 15 1.5 to 2 million people in just South Vietnam. They were in the squeeze. Our bombing campaigns or whatever in North Vietnam, they're indiscriminate. A whole lot of people died who didn't deserve to die. And for that, I'll just quietly acknowledge we did the best we could with the information we had at the time coming out of the Cold War. We did what we were ordered to do to the best of our ability, and in the vast majority of cases, take care to protect civilians, same as the troops do now.
Yeah.
So
I think it's just an interesting time where, like it was, I think, those people did believe what they believed in. And as I've gotten older, I can understand that a little bit better. But it did seem like, your generation was taken to that personal level. You were the individual veteran that was being held responsible for, a foreign policy that, like you said before, I feel the same way about Afghanistan. I feel like we had noble reasons to get in it first, and we lost our way. And we won't talk anymore about that, but it's just, that's how I felt too. But I just felt like your generation of veterans just took it on the chin because, you were being, held accountable for an administration. And then and anything, there's people that didn't do what they're supposed to do, but that's not,
right.
not what everybody was doing. So it was just a tough time to I can only imagine to see that,
So, I mean, I talk to high school students. I don't go a lot through my own experiences. It's pretty boilerplate. If you're on SEAL team, I did what most everybody did. But I set it up. I start with the 1800s, and here is the history of that region of the world, and the various influences between China, France, Japan. France was going to be a caretaker for Vietnam for the Japanese as long as they get dibs on exploiting Vietnam after World War II. Come on.
Yeah.
And why couldn't Harry Truman talk to Charles de Gaulle and say, hey, look, this is a different world. We don't go exploiting people anymore. We're better off in the long run to raise everybody's opportunities, no matter where it is. Cut them a good deal, get your trade going. Everybody will make money. It's okay. But no, the French went back in and they did their thing, and they got booted out by Ho Chi Minh and the Viet Minh and then by extension now, Ho Chi Minh, after being rebuffed by the Western forces, went to the east, China and Russia, for their support. He wanted to unify the country. Well, it wasn't split until 1954. But he was bound and determined to unify it. So he let people leak through and set up in South Vietnam. Anyway, he had a long-term plan of unifying the country. And under Vietnam or under communism, well, that was his plan, and that's what he ended up doing. And thousands and thousands and thousands of South Vietnamese were executed because they weren't submissive enough to live under communism. So it's rough. We were there to stop the advance of communism in the Cold War. That's one of the reasons. And but it was very, very complicated for a master's course somewhere. But I've done a lot of reading since then, and I appreciate a lot more now than I did back then.
Yeah. Yeah. I just think at that time I was just seeing, the stories from my dad, and how they felt, and, and then just, getting into the history of it and stuff like that. I just felt like I've always thought that your generation of veterans just, individually were held responsible for stuff that wasn't in their control. You know what I mean? And I do believe that, a lot of the people that were protesting were, I don't think anybody's been, they're misled, but also I think there's always, I don't, being 52 years old, I'm not a fan of war either. So I could tell you that, I can get that people want to stop it, and just it is what it was. But I just felt that whole, we hear those stories. It's just like you were held responsible for stuff that you didn't. So I thank you for your service. I know not many people at that time did, but
there were times towards the end, my second tour and that, I said, I'm just tired of the death, the blood and the death and the misery. Why don't we just play capture the flag, get somebody in a headlock, and then bring them over to our side? Okay, you're out of the game, and then do that.
Yeah.
And fantasy, I know, but nobody who has had any reasonable experience with war, or very few, enjoy it. There's got to be a better solution.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things like, it's crazy because, when I was young, that's, seeing my dad doing it, it's like, I can't lie. It's what I wanted to do. And then I think my father told me a long time ago, be careful what you wish for, because it might come true, and it does. And it just changes you as a man. I think that's why war is a young person's game. When we don't, like you said earlier in the podcast, you didn't know what you didn't know. You thought you were invincible. Nothing's going to happen to me. And quickly you learn that.
We found out that it's, at whatever the muzzle velocity is of ammunition, there's not a lot you can do to get out of the way. So anyway.
So you had a long career in the grocery business. I mean, do you want to talk about that, or do you want to talk more about what you're passionate about now with what do you want to talk about next?
I'll give you a brief career. I started with Big Bear stores, which were prevalent here. Came back from the service, started working back at Big Bear stores. Then I worked, and I started to go, and I tried for the Columbus Fire Department, and they tested out, and then the test was set aside because it was flawed. So came back and tested again in 1975. The same day my wife was delivering our son to Riverside, I was going to take a civil service test at the Iowa State Fairgrounds. Okay, focus, compartmentalize. So I did well on the test, but they had divided out for minority list and white list, they called it. So I was number 47 out of 1,300 or so on my list. So they were going to hire one for one going down through, and that list was supposed to last 2 years. And anyway, that didn't work out, because when I finally got called, this was 2 years into the list that was about to expire, civil service. They send me a letter on a Thursday evening, is when I saw it. You reported fire training class such and such on Monday. You mean I've been waiting here 4 years for this? And you can't call in and say you can't make it. You have to show up personally. I've got a job. If they don't want me to call in, I'm not going to call. Mm-hmm. But at that time, I had already gotten an offer of the best job I could have gotten at that time with INK Distributors, which is the district manager of the largest division. So that company grew by more than a factor of 100 between 1974 and 1988. And I was in charge of the largest division, and our company, or our division, grew by about a factor of 10. Anyway, I did very well, made a lot of friends, and worked for a guy named John. Well, then I got recruited to be a food broker, and that was a different perspective. And that was basically selling. You don't buy and resell stuff. So you're selling pallet loads, trailer loads of stuff. Came back in the mid 90s, went with INK distributors. They were bought out in 2000. And then in 02, this John and another gentleman and myself, we started yet another company, a distributing company, which now I understand employs like 45 people. And then I work for John on his brokerage end of his business. So we maintain an office of 5 or 6 people and made a nice living. I got paid to talk for a living. I made it. So retired in 2020, and lots of friends. Can't remember very many people at all through the years who annoyed me very much. Most of them were just hardworking, good people.
I said, I mean, on top of all that, I mean, I guess we can start talking about what you do for the veteran community. You've been pretty active in doing that. So one of the big things is you founding board member of the
I am
of the
Ohio Military Hall of Fame.
Yeah, which I've never been to. Everybody keeps saying I've never been to. I heard it's the most beautiful place. I haven't
May
been May
1st, 2026, State House Atrium will be the 27th annual.
Yeah. And you actually inducted in 2019 yourself to the Ohio Hall of Fame, correct?
I did, for the Veterans Hall of Fame, and that was much because of my work within the community, with my church, family, coaching, and work throughout different veterans organizations, things like that. So
what keeps you committed to that all of these years? It's one of the things that, a lot of veterans, is connection to other people. What kept you going all these years where you're still involved with, like you said, the VFW you're involved with, still involved with, the Ohio Military Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Special Forces Association, all that.
Going back to schools and talking to kids, what's your driving force behind that?
I think I've attained a status of, kind of a young old guy, and I have some experiences to share, and I try to work to give a rounded perspective and try to include as many perspectives as I can. What I do, what I enjoy a lot is finding out other veteran stories, much like we're doing here. Mm-hmm. And I just realize there's some great people out there, and I get to rub shoulders with them. Yeah. And the Ohio Military Hall of Fame, we started out in 1999. I got invited to a lunch group. And one of the guys in the lunch group, Ed Arthur from Lancaster, Ohio, had this conception he tried to get into the Ohio Veterans Hall of Fame, and he's a law enforcement, he's in sheriff and things like that, plus served in Vietnam in the Air Cav. He thought with his community involvement, he'd get selected, and he wasn't. And so he wanted to, I'll say it on the air, he wanted to create an organization where he would qualify. And God bless him, it was a great idea. And because he got a commendation medal with V, he was in a helicopter crash and things were very hairy, and he kept a lid on it, survived that experience. And so if he's born in Ohio or entered the service from Ohio, which he was, and was awarded any medal for valor, which he was in our first class. So Bob White was a major. He enlisted at first, retired a major, Special Forces. He was in that first class. Roger Holbrook was a Bronze Star recipient, Special Forces. He was in the first class. Bob White and Roger Holbrook have passed away. Ed Arthur has passed away. Anyway, we were in this, we'd get together and tell war stories. In fact, I was invited because somebody said, we need some fresh material. we've heard everybody's lives before, and just joking. But there's some impressive people. There were, here I am at E4, and here's E8s and E9s, a retired colonel, to at least 2 retired majors. And so they wanted to put this thing together, and Bob White did all the heavy lifting legally to get us set up as a nonprofit. And we had our first ceremony in the year 2000. And so we had 12 people, and for a number of years, let's say 4 or 5 or 6, we had 12 people per class. And then the word started getting out. The member of the first class was Ron Rosser. He was still alive. He's from Crooksville, Ohio, I think. Dante Guzzo, Distinguished Service Cross. It should have been a Medal of Honor, World War II. He was a great guy. None of these guys are around anymore. Anyway, I like to say we're finishing up lunch, and I went to get rid of some coffee and came back, and they made me the front man for the organization, which is fine. I'm A4. Yes, yes, sir. I'd be proud to do it. And I've done that for 26 years now. But the people that cross my paths, my radar screen, and I get to interact with are just incredible. We had a guy named Mark Smith who lives in Thailand. He won a distinguished. He won. He was awarded a Distinguished Service Cross for a very tough battle, which he ultimately lost. He got captured and was a POW for 6 or 7 months in a hole down near down in the Delta, and that's no fun. And so he spent a lot of his remaining years, and still does, helping to find the remains of people who are missing in action. He was recognized about 3-4 years ago, and he came back, and I told him at this year's ceremony, "Hey, Mark," I said, "I got you a little award for traveling the farthest for this reunion, just like you do." And he does it a year, maybe once a year, and he'll come back and take care of errands and see buddies and take care of things. And then but he lives in Thailand. So there's so many good people that I've encountered that I wouldn't have ordinarily, whether it's working, being in the VFW or Catholic War Veterans, or any venue. But this has given me I'm blessed. I'm in a very happy place. Chico, just some amazing people.
So how many applications do you guys get each year? And how many do you induct normally?
We induct everyone who is qualified.
Okay.
The Ohio Veterans Hall of Fame gets about 100 applications, give or take 20 every year. And that shows you how many exceptional veterans there are in Ohio, mm-hmm. who serve the community. And if you read their summaries, it's like they're spending 50 years just doing where do you get time to do that? Most of my activity, community-wise, veteran-wise, came since 2000.
I mean, just so you know, that's 26 years. So that's a pretty good chunk of time.
It seems like nothing. I function as an executive director. So going back to applications, we get about 20 a year. And sometimes we do some research, but we try to get our goal is every qualified veteran. So sometimes we can't locate family members, but a lot of times, I had to do some research to get 2 different family members from the Dallas, Texas area for this past ceremony. they didn't know each other either. One is a Forrest Everhart Jr. His dad survived Medal of Honor action in World War II, and he died in mid 1970s. But I get a hold of him, and there's another guy that was a Ken Cordier, who was a longtime POW, 7 years plus. He's very active in the POW nationally, the POW movement. And he had passed away the summer before, last summer in 24. And his wife came up. So these people come from all over the country. There was one time, one of my favorite stories is 2014 or so. After a particular ceremony, there was a woman who was the niece of a Korean War vet. There was maybe 35 people from her extended family from all over the country. And she said it was the first time that anyone had ever acknowledged my uncle's sacrifice in a public venue.
Yeah.
That's why I do it. Could be, and Norm Lambert, Silver Star, Vietnam, Silver Star, Korea, Purple Heart Korea, Purple Heart Vietnam, Marine in Korea, Army, Special Forces, Vietnam. Just look up Norm Lambert. He passed away, and his wife Joyce, he was in hospice, and I was seeing him once in a while, and Joyce called and said, well, it's not going to be long. So I left work early and picked up a little splash of something to drink and went to Norm's house, and he was able to say hello. And he asked me then, he said, how long am I going to do it? Long as I can breathe, long as I can. So I said, Joyce, can you get us we're going to have just a little splash. I gave him a little taste, and I said, I would like to have a toast with Norm. And she's looking for, I don't have any whiskey glasses. I said, how about a coffee cup? And I'll just put a dab in there, and I'll do the same with my coffee cup, and we'll toast. And he died the next day.
Sorry to hear that.
Now he was, we had known him since 2003. He was inducted then. And he had a lasting illness, COPD, and some other issues, but he's another person. Gosh, how many exceptional people do you get to encounter in this business? And that puts me again in a very, very happy place. I'm very satisfied with how I spend my time.
So tied into the question I had. So, it's interesting because it's kind of why I started it too. So I'm interested to see what your thoughts are. Why do you think it's so important for, the younger generation or other people to hear stories about veterans, to honor them, on podcasts like this, or, there's people who are doing all kinds of different things to be inducted into the Ohio Military Hall of Fame? Why do you think that's so important?
Well, I remember when my dad, it was important for me to learn as much as I could about him, even when I was a kid, and even though he didn't share a lot. And I learned a lot more after he passed away. We respect those who step forward and put their lives on the line on behalf of the country. Now, the other part of that equation is young people learn the truth, learn what's worth sacrificing for, and respect the sacrifices that have been made. This country overall has sacrificed, I think, 1.2 million people killed in action, and in the various wars, including Civil War. for others' freedom, if you will, literally. And that's a pretty good legacy to have as a country. But you don't go, I know we won't talk politics, but please educate yourselves and have the right value system where you're trying to do more for others rather than have look for, the next scheme or something like that. So to respect the legacy of the armed forces is important, and also any efforts to achieve peace through other means than hot war. There's look for alternatives, and if it's the last resort, so be it. But we've all seen every veteran signs a check up to and including his life.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah, I think it's just the history, and also, what sparked this for me was obviously the suicide epidemic and telling stories and getting the truth out about all these things. It isn't all just war stories. The struggles that have went through. And not to downplay all those other things too, but there's other parts of veterans' lives that I think are important to talk about. Because really a lot of the stuff for me when I was going through it, it's what I wanted to do. So I didn't think of it as being alive as a sacrifice. Whereas, the sacrifice was me leaving my kids, leaving my wife, all these other things that went on. And these emotions that we have from being, entering service when some of us were 18 years old, I think about that very often,
the most stimulating part of your life, or at least from the most directions at the time. And when you're young and you're paying attention, it's worthwhile. And again, we want to do, by what we can for our fellow man, but on a bigger picture, as a country, we want to do what we can for the less fortunate and other people around the world.
Yeah, and I think, to me, it's just been like sharing that individual story, because whether you did, serve in combat or not, if you served your country, there's a big sacrifice you made, and it's not all, rainbows and unicorns. There's a lot of people that are struggling. They're still struggling with it. And I think it's important to talk about, to get the understanding of who people are, to really kind of understand who that grandfather was that really didn't talk a lot. And I wish that, your dad's generation had talked more. I mean, there's a lot of history, a lot of just like, great, and what I mean by stories, I'm not talking about war stories. I'm just talking about how to deal with things, what they were really feeling, that I think could be helping a lot of us right now, but it just wasn't okay then. So I think it's just super important to talk about that, because, it's one of the big things. I think that there's a lot of I feel like there's a misconception about veterans as well too. So being able to, anytime you can talk to a veteran and hear their story, it kind of opens it up a little bit. And if it can resonate with anyone to help them, I think that's huge as well too.
That was one thing coming out of Vietnam, that the job market for Vietnam veterans was a little tight, because they were being portrayed as short fuses and everything else, and had a lot of recovery to do. Which may not work very well in a work environment. I was fortunate that I had people a job that I came back to, and supportive people wherever I went. So again, it wasn't a factor for me, but it was out there.
So again, for the Ohio Military Hall of Fame, the requirements are either born in Ohio,
or entered the service from Ohio, and have been awarded a Medal for Valor in combat. Another reason, besides I was the youngest in this original group, is I didn't get an individual award for a action in combat. As low as an achievement, I don't say low because that's just the award they got. But some people with an achievement medal, combat V, commendation medal, Bronze Star with combat V, distinguished flying cross, sometimes an air medal in there, and then we have to review those narratives, citation narratives to determine. Sometimes they're written up as meritorious and, over here, okay, February 20th, blah, blah, blah. This is what happened. Okay. It would be, despite how the narrative was written up, this guy qualifies. I didn't qualify, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And that's one reason I was the front man, because I could be more circumspect, let's say.
Right.
So
I challenge anybody out there. We'll put some stuff on the page too. So if you know anybody that meets that criteria in your family, reach out, get a hold of
yes.
The folks at the Ohio Military Hall of Fame and see if you can get your loved one or former service member. If
you Google Ohio Military Hall of Fame, now our website is ohioheroes.org. Doesn't work all the time for whatever reason. But if you just a standard Google for Ohio Military Hall of Fame, you'll see the Veterans Hall of Fame as well. But look for ohioheroes.org. And if you click from that direction, then you get to the page, and then there's an application there, and also an email, info@ohioheroes.org, gets right to my computer.
Awesome.
And I'm able to follow up and help walk people through that process. Happy to do it. Happy to do it.
I'm sure those people, you said you've got to meet some awesome people. I'm sure they feel the same about meeting you as well. So,
well, if I could live up to now everybody's watching, I got to behave. No. So, but that's I take pride in at least a cognitive effort to try to be the type of person my dog thinks I am, know, that sort of thing. But these exceptional people. So happy to do it.
Yeah, I've been blessed. I mean, you're the 83rd person to sit across from, and there's part of me that's always the biggest part of me is I'm always just amazed at the stories I'm hearing and the people that I've got to meet and come down here to break bread and hear your story and share your story, and it's pretty humbling. It always makes me all the hard work and stuff to get it done. I always feel so. I just feel complete after. It feels good to be able to share.
I understand,
and be able to hear what people are going through, and to be able to sometimes some of the stuff that some people never felt comfortable doing it. So it's always awesome to have people that will come on here have never shared things that they've never shared before. There's a lot of makes me feel good. It makes me feel happy that they're able to. I'm able to have a forum where people can do that. So
if people are aware, if they're having some problems, I found it. The more you talk about it, then you get all of this. It's like public speaking in any venue. You can't even breathe. All you're doing is inhaling. Get through it and sort out your own maybe thoughts on the difficult areas. What could you have done better? Let's say acknowledge that. And if I could do it over, I'd have gone this direction possibly. But the more you get it out, in the early 2000s, I wasn't talking. I started going back to Navy SEAL reunions on the West Coast in the San Diego area. Mid-90s, the first guy that greeted me at the first reunion I went back to was Moki Martin, who is a top shelf SEAL Team 1 guy. And he called me teammate. That was rough. But then after a while, you get to seeing people, and they're reminding you of things that you'd probably want to forget that was funny at the time, blah blah blah. But and then you go into a student, a classroom setting, and I never lead with I'm a Navy SEAL, but they have, I don't look at the headlines and don't read, all the puffery, and I know what my limitations are, and I've come to be very comfortable in just sharing that, and to the extent that it could cause a student or something to have a positive thought. That's good.
Yeah. So one of the questions I always ask all the people sit across from me is, deals with PTS. So, since your time, I mean, you saw your generation suffered from PTS, still continues to do it. It's just continued to move around, and it's what I, consider to be an epidemic right now. So what, in your mind, with the warrior class, it could be focused on veterans as well. What needs to be done to help combat the epidemic we're seeing with veteran suicide?
Talk. I had a very standard 4 years, let's say. These guys since 9/11 have gone deployment, and after 2 deployments, even dialing downshift a little at the end of the second one, I was done with it. So the 1970s, and personally, had to do with whatever was going on in Washington, D.C., whatever's, you can read the history books, you find out, but that seemed to be, for personally, that I was trying to build my career, start my family and everything, but politically, that was a dark cloud for me. So I understand what some of the people are going through, and I had, maybe not the worst experience out there. And, but to whatever degree I can support the people and listen and share the message that, hey, God has some work for you to do. That's why you're here. And he's going to work through you. Nobody, not too often you get a lightning bolt in the head, and get a great new idea or anything, but open your heart, let God guide you in making the community better, but also the veterans community to whatever extent you can. That's my philosophy there.
I like it.
So
I'm big on the talking. Obviously, that's just getting it out and putting it out to the world, and people want to listen. They want to be there for you. And for me, being able to finally talk about things and hear other people talk, I don't feel broken. I feel I feel normal now, right? I feel, because there's so many people that I can talk to.
It takes time.
Yeah.
And then you can be of service to the next guy in line on the conveyor belt, further back on the conveyor belt. Just let's see. But there's a plan for us, and be open to what that is. And there's so many people out there. Yourself, look at my email list. Half of them there's 600 and some odd email. 400 or have a relationship to veterans, and they're all great people. So I'm in a good place. Like I said before, I'm happy.
Yeah, it's like I said, I feel the same way too. Being able to, I was just looking at the list because we did some. You'll see later, but there was something that you'll get later. kind of our secret gift we give out. But I owe people that we started a little later than when we started the podcast. So I was looking at this list just before you walk, when you called me with the detour trying to get here, and I was looking at these lists, and I keep, forgetting to like, hey, let's get with these guys and get them and gals and get them their gift. But when I started looking at the list, I was like, holy shit, these, like when I start, looking at the people that have been on, and then my memory is still pretty good when I have them on, even though it's 83, some of the things do blur together, but I do know people's story. And I was like, holy shit, I've been super blessed to be able to have people like these, you and them in my home, to be able to what I consider to be a safe space down here where people can come in and share their story. And I feel super blessed by it. It's funny you say that about God. I like to use the word higher power a little bit better, but I, for the longest time, didn't have a higher power. I thought I thought I was my own higher power, and didn't turn things over to a higher power. And since I've done that, it's been amazing. You know what I mean? That weight that's been taken off of me.
Frees you up to do some great things. So you don't have to worry about the minutia. You got to be the answer to everybody's problem. No. There's certain things you can put in a bushel basket and send it down the line to the higher power, whoever. Handle that. Give me something else here I can help with. So
the higher power to me has been like because I always believed in higher power, but I thought it was a judgmental higher power, because that's who I wasn't myself. I was judgmental of a lot of people. I was judgmental of myself. So now that I've, figured out that this, and my higher power is not that. My higher power, made me how I am. And I'm not perfect, but I'm okay with it. And my life's been a lot different being able to turn it over that way and not have that carried around feeling like I have to figure it all out. And I'm responsible for when I don't figure it out. There's all these crazy things with the past couple of years for me, and figuring out the higher power, because I used to always brag about I didn't believe in a higher power, and that was bullshit. I was afraid to really talk about it, and really afraid to see what that day was going to be like to meet my higher power, and I'm okay with that now. So
as am I. Let me mention your wife, your family, your kids, those of us veterans who are lucky enough to be in a good relationship, and the women and other significant others who support your efforts. I mentioned I married my wife September 25th, 1971. And so it's been 54 years. And she also shares a lot of the minutia that I would normally have to deal with. And thank God for that.
So what you're saying, she's lucky to have you. That's what I say about my wife.
She will say that, and we'd do it over in a heartbeat. Okay. Only thing is, we'd be smarter from day one. instead of going, we were still getting it together. I got job, blah, 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 and try to work out. When I had kids, I had to, I'm thinking, if there's something physical, I need to be physical to save them. I better not in shape. So I was pushing it, and I liked it. So, and physical things in the service. So still, as recently as 10 years ago, I was still benching my body weight 8 times. So,
good you.
So, but I was always good with that. Now pressing overhand, not so much. That's the way. Oh well. So anyway, that's
the families are important. I think
the significant others.
Oh yeah, it's always huge. I mean, I always tell people all the time when they thank a service member, thank the family members, the spouse, then thank the kids as well too, because they sacrifice. They do in a very different way, and sometimes I argue even in a worse way than we did as a service members, because most of the time we were wanting to do it. We wanted to be doing it, and we're kind of blinded by what it was like to be in the military, and we really didn't give a shit about the other stuff, and they were just moving along with us.
Because you had to be focused on what you were doing, and that took up most of your spectrum of attention. and the wives understand that. But the kids, when they're young, not so much, and they hate to have dad away for 6 months or a year. That's a huge sacrifice.
I wish if I could go back to, I don't like to go back and say wish things, but like those blinders, they need to be open a little more, because all those things, yes, I had to be focused. We had to be focused as service members, but there's some things that, like, that's why we talk about on these, that, to be honest with, is like, like just talking to a guy yesterday, like, I'm not, my sons don't come to me about some things because I was never around. And when I was around, I wasn't the person that they needed me to be at the time. So that's what I'm talking about, the sacrifice. I just wish my blinders were off a little bit more, so I could have been a little bit more focused on them, because in the end of it, that's all I have is them. Right. So, but that's one of the things to talk about. And as I use that excuse to be not the best dad, not the best husband. I try to not take those blinders off and be like, hey, but it's what happened, and it's repairable. I still think, my boys all love me. I'm pretty sure, most of the time, but yeah, I'm okay with that now. I'm okay with them not, calling my wife and discussing the problem, because I was never there for them at some point. And that stuff hurts sometimes. It used to hurt a lot. But now it's what happened, I'm okay with it. But yeah, this is definitely a huge sacrifice by them. And for a long time, I said I saw it or acknowledged it, but I really didn't see it and feel like I do now,
I completely understand. We evolve. And as veterans, we have another component of our evolution that to a greater or lesser degree, and lesser as you get a little older, those pressures from active duty service, but never forgotten.
So one final question. We went over the 2 hours, but we got a little more time. So final question for you. So you talked about sharing other people's story through the Ohio Military Hall of Fame. What message you have to the listeners now, either the veterans, civilians, young kids, whoever's listening, what do you hope they take away from your story?
Well, I'll go back to, I'm an average guy, and average people can sometimes do extraordinary things if you challenge yourself. So that, in a short answer, that's what I would do. You can challenge yourself physically, or you can challenge yourself mentally and emotionally, and benefit from all three. Work hard at challenging yourself, and you won't be wasting time. It's all good. You'll get where you need to be.
And I just want to throw out there, you're far from average, but I'll just tell you that's okay. I love that. It's better to be humble. I like how humble you are. It's amazing. But to accomplish what you've accomplished in the early, in the 60s with early SEAL Team 1 and what you did, it's, you're an amazing man.
If I can share the message, if I have enough credibility to share my message, I'm happy.
I'll hype you up. You're not average, but that's
great.
I love how humble. Right. So anything else you want to chat about?
Probably fishing. You catching any fish lately?
I've been fishing in a while.
Oh, I enjoy fishing. I enjoy catching more than fishing, but I've caught enough fish in the long run to kind of satisfy that urge, because I think I was 50 years old before I started catching decent smallmouth bass or anything regularly. One of my personal development things, I couldn't play softball well enough to be on good teams, really good teams. So I umpired. So I umpired adult softball for probably 35 years. And again, different personalities. And I never let on. One time I had a dark blue hat. It had SEAL Team 1 on it, and nobody gave me any crap. But I didn't wear it for that. I'm ASA. As an umpire, you owe the teams your best effort, and they appreciated me hustling around. But I enjoyed that especially well around here in Westerville area.
Now I'm sad that my dad's not here, because my dad did the same thing for the longest time. It was a big umpiring was his
all they need You don't have to be a big part of the show. Just make the correct call
Yeah.
and hustle.
He's always crying, and my dad loved that. I think he was out there all the time and
So
enjoyed that. So
yeah, guitar
I'm sorry he
playing.
missed it.
Guitar playing. I didn't like the way I sounded. Back in Vietnam, there was a couple of guys that showed me different things. And I'd press a recorder and sing, and I don't want that to get out of the bathroom here. So ultimately, I was at a St. Matthias Catholic Church on Ferris and Carl Road, and reading bulletin, well, the modern music group needs a guitar player. This may have been 1992 or 3. And I said, if that isn't God putting the size 10 right in your wallet area, I don't know what is. So I started being part of that group and got through a lot of the jitters and things like that. And one thing led to another. The bass player in that group was in bluegrass music. So anyway, so I've been playing publicly for going on 35 years, and I enjoy playing in nursing homes. I have 3 that I go to every month or most months, and jam with guys. I'm jamming currently with a couple of people that are about 60 years old, and they're pulling me 20 years, toward, a little further along than I was before. It's a great thing.
I just love how you smile when you said jam, and that's the way you say it.
Well, we are,
and
everyone I jam with is a better musician than I am, which forces me to focus. And we have a 6-person group called the Rock of Agers. That our drummer is 80 years old, and he was finishing up when we do Creedence Clearwater and everything, and he was banging those drums, and I'm looking over, and his broken drumstick goes flying over. He wasn't cutting those drums any slack, and we're blessed that lead guitar, I play a rhythm guitar, acoustic plugged in, and do some singing along, but the bass player is somebody I knew in 7th grade. But music is to share. I've had a couple of music mentors along the way. One of them is Hilda Doyle. And it's music is to share with other people. And she's still doing it. I mean, she would let me up on her stage in a bar in Worthington and give me encouragement and give me some tips, things like that. So God bless her, and God bless everybody who can, now we get to where, hey, you're pretty good. Okay. Thank you for that. I'm glad you enjoyed it. So that's another big piece of what I enjoy, a little bit of travel. So stuff.
I could see the smile on your face with the music. That's awesome.
Every time. Yeah. Every time.
Is it Rock of Agers, you said, or Ages?
Rock of Agers.
That's what I thought. It's a great name.
Because I think I'm the second oldest. I'll be 77 here in a little bit. But down to 2 people in the 60s, a couple of people in the earlier 70s. But a lot of them, most of them had, like the drummer had a band in college, and in the Boston area. So they had an Atlantic Records contract, and he was bugging me for a long time to let's get together and jam. And I said, well, I do, Everly Brothers, Simon and Garfunkel, Gordon Lightfoot, it's not a lot of this rock and roll stuff. So I have to up my game so I can bring this Roger into the loop. And by the same token, other people just throw the mix on. I don't know, not even including all my church music that I had. It was, there's 6 loose leaf binders of stuff that I've got that I can't remember, but it's right there, and I enjoy playing. And my grandkids think I'm pretty good.
I can just see the smile on your face, so it's awesome to see that. I'm gonna have to try to maybe see where you guys are playing.
It's a blast.
See up there. I just want to see this 80-year-old drummer. That's tearing it up. So
Very good.
well, thank you. I want to thank you again for coming on. Ted, it's been awesome. I've been looking forward to having you on. So thank you for coming in. Thank you for hitting me up and being flexible about coming on.
My pleasure. You're most welcome.
And thank you for everything you're doing for the community with the Ohio Military Hall of Fame and all the other organizations you're involved in, the nursing homes.
Yeah, we'll just keep doing it till we can't.
Yeah. Hope so.
Appreciate it.
So we'll take the part of the night that I like the least, and it was very important. Tonight we're going to honor a service member who unfortunately took their life. Tonight we honor U.S. Navy Petty Officer First Class Anthony Joseph Lembo, 27. Anthony took his life on November 8th, 2010 in Portsmouth, Virginia. Anthony was born on January 4th, 1983 in Queens County, New York. After graduating from high school, Anthony enlisted in the United States Navy and successfully graduated from SWCC, Special Warfare Combatant Craft Crewman Training in Coronado, California. During his time in service, Anthony served alongside U.S. Navy SEALs as a combatant craft crewman during multiple overseas combat deployments and stateside training missions. Prior to taking his life, Anthony experienced sleep problems, speech problems, and nearly stopped eating. Anthony suffered from PTSD and refused pleas from his family, especially his wife Stephanie, to seek help because he was afraid he might lose his security clearance if he admitted that he was having psychological problems. Anthony is survived by his wife Stephanie, parents Anthony and Patricia, sons Anthony and Lucas, and numerous other relatives and friends. And please, if you or someone you know is in crisis and might be considering suicide, please contact the Veterans Crisis Line at 988, or you can dial 1-800-273-825 and press 1, or text 838-255, or chat online at veteranscrisisline.net/chat. And before we get to before we sign off, I need your help to do something, because we have a raffle. I was supposed to do this a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
So I need to pick. This is from a couple weeks ago from one of our guests from Chaplain Auto Ministries. He gave us a T-shirt. We asked a question during the podcast, and all those people that answered the question correctly got a ticket here. So they're going to win a T-shirt. So we're supposed to do this 2 weeks ago, and I forgot. So we're going to be honored to have you pick the name out of there. None of the tickets are crumpled in there, so I'm going to hand it to you. You just pull a ticket. You can shake it up if you want.
I'll get in there, mix it up.
I like it. There we go. Oh, here we go. Susan Overstreet Hinch. I know she is. So she's the winner. We'll put that right there. Thank you for doing that for us.
Great.
Sorry for the delay in getting that out. We'll end it with a quote here from another Vietnam veteran like yourself, Carl Melantis. So this quote is, "We all want to be special, to stand out. There's nothing wrong with this. The irony is that every human being is special to start with, because we're unique to start with. But then we go through some sort of boot camp from the age of 0 to 18, where we learn everything we can about not to be unique." And that's again from Carl Melantis.
That's a good perspective.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure this one's either from Matterhorn or I think this one's from Matterhorn. I'm not sure which one of his books. What It's Like to Go to War. One of those two. But yeah, great. I thought it was a good quote from some experience you've had, and also from another fellow Vietnam veteran. So we'd have a couple other announcements, I think, up here, if you could pull it up for me, Nate. No, go back to where you're at. That one right there. Yep. Nope. Oh. Yeah. No, down right there. There we go. So we're about 2 weeks out, or 3 weeks out now, actually, from a fundraiser we're going to have at OPA. This is going to be with On Your 6. We'll have an event on Wednesday up at OPA Grill and Tavern in Delaware, Ohio, and then we're going to actually have our second Navy SEAL following up, an old-time Vietnam SEAL, coming on to the podcast on Thursday. So more details as we come and get closer to that. So we'd like to see everybody come out. There's going to be some great events for veterans. We're going to have some giveaways. We just haven't figured out what that is yet. And we are officially filled through 2025. So if you do want to join us next year, hit us up. We're starting to fill next year. So I'm sure, Ted, you might be able to get some people here.
The gentleman that we couldn't put together his date, I'd still like to have him show up. He's PJ Coulter. He's one of the original board members of the Ohio Military Hall of Fame as well. And hopefully we can get him on.
Yep. We got a lot of dates from him.
Once you plug him in, you won't even have to ask another question.
Awesome.
He'll start talking. He joins me every year, or I join him at Thomas Worthington High School. They have a veterans program this year on the 9th. I think that's a Friday, the 8th. And anyway, he entertains the high school students. His favorite thing is, they told me to get down, how'd you get shot? He was severely injured, and he told me to get down, and I just started to do my thing. And that wasn't what I should have been doing, but hey, that's the kind of sense of humor he has. Great guy.
Awesome. Well, again, I want to thank you for coming on. It's been an honor and privilege to have you on here. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we will see everyone in about 3 weeks. Thank you for everybody that tuned in, and we will see you soon. Have a great night.